Hello, and welcome to Atis Conflict Studio, where we try to manage conflicts. Have you ever felt like a decision in a team was made, not because it was the best idea, but because the person in charge said so? Or noticed that in some workplaces, conflicts are handled behind closed doors, while in others, they play out in open debate? Power and hierarchy shape the way conflicts unfold everywhere, from offices to families, from business deals to friendships. Understanding how authority impacts communication, decision making, and fairness can give us better tools to manage conflict, no matter the setting. In today's episode, we are breaking down how power and hierarchy influence conflict resolution, and more importantly, how we can work with these dynamics rather than against them. Let's get into it. Imagine the scenario. In a large corporation, a mid-level manager suggests a new project strategy during a team meeting. However, the final decision is made by a senior executive without any input from the team. As a result, team members feel sidelined and frustrated, leading to simmering tensions that could have been diffused with a more inclusive approach. This example highlights how power structures can significantly impact conflict resolution and the overall workplace atmosphere. Understanding power and hierarchy in conflict resolution. Before we define power, let's address an important question. How can we truly resolve conflicts when power is imbalanced, when there is inequality? For conflict resolution to be amicable and voluntary, both parties need to feel that they have equal footing, or at least the freedom to negotiate without pressure. But when power is involved, the dynamic shifts. If one party has significantly more authority, influence, or control, how can the other party genuinely engage in conflict resolution without feeling coerced or at least unduly pressured? This is what makes power and hierarchy such a key factor in conflict resolution. It's not just about the conflict itself, it's also about who holds the authority in the situation and whether both parties feel safe and empowered to speak openly. Let's define power. Power exists in many forms, some obvious, some hidden, such as formal authority, a manager, executive, or leader who can make top-down decisions. Social status, influence that comes from reputation, connections, or expertise. Unspoken influence, the power someone holds over others through subtle cues, access to resources, or even intimidation. Cultural authority. In some cultures, power is not just about rank, it's about age, experience, and seniority. This last point is particularly relevant in cultures with strong hierarchical traditions. For example, in many Eastern cultures, such as parts of Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, age and experience naturally command deference. A senior employee, even without a formal leadership title, may hold unspoken influence over younger colleagues. In Western cultures, workplace hierarchy may be based more on job titles and meritocracy, meaning that younger employees may feel more empowered to challenge authority without fear of social backlash. However, even in the West, long tenure at a company can create invisible authority, where employees who have been there for years assume decision-making power, despite lacking an official leadership role. So, even when there's no formal policy or company rule for granting extra authority, cultural and social norms still create power imbalances that impact conflict resolution. If someone feels pressure to defer out of cultural respect rather than because of company policy, is the resolution truly fair? The hierarchical lens. In strict hierarchies, the chain of command dictates how communication flows. Decisions are passed down from the top, often without input from lower levels. Those at the bottom may not feel safe speaking up, even if they disagree. This structure simplifies decision making, but can stifle open dialogue and make conflict resolution feel unfair. But beyond formal authority, unspoken cultural norms can make conflict resolution even more complex. If someone feels obligated to defer to a senior figure purely out of cultural expectation, how do we ensure that the resolution process isn't just compliance, but actually fair? This is where strategies like mediation, structured dialogue, and transparency become crucial. Cultural dimensions of authority. High power distance cultures versus low power distance cultures. In many parts of Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, high power distance is a norm. Here, respect for authority is paramount. Employees typically defer to managers and senior figures, viewing direct confrontation as disrespectful, even if it means unresolved issues. Conflict resolution often involves discreet mediation by a respected intermediary. Low power distance cultures. In contrast, many Western cultures, such as the United States, Canada, and parts of Europe, encourage questioning authority and promoting a more egalitarian approach. In these settings, open discussion, even challenging higher ups, is seen as constructive, with conflict resolution favoring transparency and direct feedback. Now, let's look into conflict resolution in hierarchical contexts. Influence of authority. When conflicts arise, the existing power structure can either smooth the resolution process or exacerbate the divide. In rigid hierarchies, a top down decision might quickly settle a conflict, but it can also leave underlying issues unaddressed, breeding future discontent. Mediation and the role of a third party. In environments where power differentials are pronounced, a neutral mediator often becomes essential. This trusted figure helps bridge the gap between conflicting parties, ensuring that even the less powerful have their voices heard without directly challenging the status quo. Decision making, balancing authority and fairness, top down versus inclusive decision making. In many workplaces, decisions are made in one of the two ways. Top down decision making is when the boss or a higher up makes the call and everyone else follows. It's quick, clear, and gets things done fast. But it can also leave people feeling left out and unheard. On the other hand, inclusive decision making is when leaders actually ask for input from their team before making a decision. It takes more time and effort, but it usually feels fair and gets more buy in from everyone involved. Think of it like this. If a manager just announces a big change without discussion, employees might quietly disagree but go along with it. But if the manager asks for feedback first, people feel valued and they are more likely to support the decision even if it's not perfect. The challenge is finding a balance between the two. Too much top down control, people disengage. Too much discussion, decisions take forever, and no decision may be made for issues with a lot of different opinions. So the question becomes, how do leaders create a system where decisions are both efficient and fair? In other words, how do we promote fairness in practice? Fairness isn't just about treating everyone the same. It's about making sure that everyone's voice actually counts. In workplaces where some people naturally have more power, whether because of their title, experience, or personality, it's easy for certain voices to get drowned out. And when that happens, decisions might feel one sided, even if they weren't meant to be. But fairness isn't just about who gets to talk, it's about who gets heard and how decisions are made. For example, if a junior employee hesitates to speak up in a meeting because they think their opinion doesn't matter, that's not a fair environment, even if technically they had the chance to talk. If only the loudest and most senior voices get taken seriously, that's also an imbalance and not fair. True fairness means making space for different perspectives and ensuring that people aren't just invited to the conversation. They feel safe contributing to it. When that happens, conflicts become opportunities for better teamwork, creativity, and trust. There are strategies to bridge power gap in conflict resolution that I will share with you. Power imbalances can make people hesitate to speak up, even when their input is valuable, whether it's fear of challenging authority, disrupting harmony, or facing retaliation. These barriers prevent open conversation and weaken decision making. So, how do we create environments where people feel safe sharing their perspectives? Addressing the fear of retaliation. One of the biggest unspoken reasons people stay silent is the fear of consequences. Even in workplaces that claim to encourage open discussion, employees may still hold back because past experiences taught them speaking up led to punishment or exclusion, or company culture isn't clear on whether disagreement is truly welcomed. And sometimes it's simply muscle memory from previous jobs that makes them assume there is a hierarchy. But here's the problem. When employees self censor, leadership misses out on valuable feedback that could improve decision making, culture, and innovation. So, how do organizations break this cycle? 1. Encourage open communication without fear. It's not enough to just say we value open communication. Leaders need to actively prove it. Model vulnerability. When managers admit mistakes or seek feedback, it shows that speaking up is safe. Reward honesty, not just agreement. When employees see that constructive feedback leads to action, not punishment, they'll trust the process. Normalize disagreements. If only positive opinions are encouraged, people will assume negative feedback is risky. 2. Implement mediation protocols. In hierarchies where power differences are too strong for direct conversations, a neutral mediator or an organizational ombudsman can help balance the scales. This person should understand the workplace culture and power dynamics, ensure both sides feel heard without fear of backlash, create structured ways for employees to raise concerns such as anonymous reporting or regular check ins. How else can we break this cycle? 3. Train leaders to recognize power imbalances. Leaders aren't always aware of how their position affects employees' willingness to engage. Encourage leaders to ask for feedback privately, not just in public settings. Some employees may hesitate to speak up in meetings. Train managers to notice silence. If employees rarely challenge ideas, it might not be agreement, it might be fear. Make it clear that disagreement is not the equivalent of disrespect. If employees feel they must agree to survive, the workplace isn't truly open. Next strategy is to 4. Adopt transparent decision-making frameworks. When decisions feel hidden or unexplained, employees assume that speaking up won't change anything. Transparency can help by explaining why decisions were made, even when feedback isn't implemented. Allowing employees to see how their input influences leadership choices. Providing structured ways to give feedback like town halls or anonymous surveys. Real-life example. Let's look into this real-life example navigating conflict in multinational teams, where different cultural expectations around hierarchy shape conflict resolution. Imagine this: a senior manager who is used to a hierarchical leadership style assumes that once they've made a decision, the team will simply follow along. But in the same team, there are employees from low power distance cultures who are more comfortable challenging authority and sharing feedback. When a disagreement arises over project direction, the manager expects compliance, but notices hesitation from the team. Not because they agree, but because they aren't sure if speaking up is safe. Recognizing the tension, the manager tries a new approach. They create a structured feedback session where employees anonymously submit their concerns before discussing them openly. What happens? The team feels heard. The conflict is resolved transparently. The workplace culture shifts towards inclusion without disregarding hierarchy. As we see, this simple adjustment in approach transformed the way the team navigated hierarchy and decision making. At the end of the day, power and hierarchy shape how conflicts play out. A top-down approach might resolve issues quickly, but often misses valuable input and erodes trust over time. On the other hand, inclusive decision-making builds commitment, but only if people actually feel safe speaking up. The key takeaway? Conflict resolution isn't just about who is right or wrong. It's about creating spaces where all voices can be heard. And that starts with recognizing power imbalances, removing the fear of retaliation, and fostering real transparency. Because when we get that right, conflicts don't just disappear, they become opportunities for stronger teams and smarter decisions. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Ati's Conflict Studio. We covered a lot, from power imbalances to retaliation, hierarchy, and decision making. But the real question is, how have you seen power dynamics shape conflicts in your own life? Have a story to share? I'd love to hear it. Reach out and let's keep the conversation going. And remember, not all conflicts can be resolved, but every conflict can be managed. See you in the next episode.